And hi there folks, my name's NovaWing24 and welcome to a little tutorial on IFR, well, an introductory tutorial on IFR flying. So this is going to be done in accompaniment to an article that's that's been published over at FSXinsider.com. So this sort of just gives you which gives you the basics of sort of introduces the basic concepts of instrument flight rules flying and what instruments to use to be able to, when you have weather that's socked in like this with this beautiful fog here in Hawaii. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be taking the Mooney Bravo from Lanai, and we're going to be heading west. We're going to be heading east over to Hilo International. So this is just a quick little flight, just to sort of put some of the theory into practice. So we're going to be going through and just taking one of the default aircraft here. So this is the Mooney Bravo, the default from FSX. And what we're going to be doing, as I said, we're going to be flying this one. We're going to be doing a VOR to VOR navigation. Now we could have just, we could make this easy and just sort of, GPS and hit a couple switches and it does its thing, but what we're going to do is we're going to be doing VOR to VOR navigation. So we're going to go through, we're going to do some of the prep work first, and then we're going to take off, we're going to do our flight and see how it all put all this theory into practice. So as I said, we're going to jump in the cockpit now and do all our prep work for the flight today. So we've prepped our charts, so we know what we're going to be looking at. Now we need to put it all into the cockpit. Alrighty, so here we are in the cockpit of the Mooney Bravo here. So beautiful, sleek aircraft that it is. Alright, so first things first, what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to have a look at, we're going to need to go down into our radio stack here, and we're going to need to do a bit of panel sort of prep work with our frequencies. So the first thing that we're going to be sort of doing from consulting on our charts is that we're going to need, first VOR we're going to need is 117.7, which is Lanai. Now from Lanai we're going to be following the 107 radial outbound. So the first thing to do is let's set that one. So we need 117.7. So let's set that one on our nav1. There we go. Okay, we've got that one there. And we can see here that our DME is already lit up, so we know it's pretty much on top of the airport, so it's about just under 2 miles away from where we're parked at the moment. Now the second VOR that we're going to need today is we're going to need the Apollo point one, which is 112.3. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that into our standby frequency for our nav1 now. So we're going to get some of our prep work done. So let's make that 112.3. Alright, so that's now our standby frequency. But what we're also going to do, and I'll show you why, we'll talk about why later in the flight, but we're also going to put that into our active frequency on our nav2. So we're going to do that one now, so bring that one down to, as you can see, we're just adjusting there for nav2. Alright, so 112.3, so we'll make that the active on nav2. Alright, so we're there. Now, today we're going to be cruising at around about 6,000 feet, so we'll just set our altitude hold for that. A bit too far. No worries, there we go, and we're still working our standard civilian VOR frequency. VFR, well, VFR's probably not going to work so well for this one, but yeah, well, no other traffic in the air today, so that's what it'll do. Alright, so now that we've got our frequency set, the next thing that we need to do, we need to set our HSIs, or horizontal situation indicator. So what we're going to need to be doing, as I said before, we're going to be flying the 107 degree outbound radial. So we need to set our course or heading bugs for those things. So we're going to be looking for 107 degrees. So that would be 110. Should be about right there. Alright, and then we'll need to do our nav selector for this as well, because this is how we're going to keep on course. So let's do there. Okay, that's 10. Bring it back 3 notches. There we go. Alright, so we've got our one more, I think. No. Yeah. One more. Alright. So we've got our HSI set. Now, what we can also set it over here as well, just for our Omniberry Nav 2. So because, and I'll show why on that one. So this is actually a good one to have. This one. So we're going to be heading approximately the same. So ideally we want these two to match. So we're going to move you around. do 100 degrees. So, oh, that was actually the good I picked up that mistake. So, let's try that again, shall we? So we're looking at, that's 110, and back 3. Okay. Alright, so we've got our 110 degrees there. And we're going to need to go 1, 2, 3. There we are for 107 degrees. Okay, awesome. Alright. Now you see over here with our nav GPS switch is left and nav, because it's going to be pulling its navigational data and its bearing data from the radio sources. So there we go. Alright, that sounds like a plan. I think we're just about ready to go now. We've got all our lights on, we've got our prop de-ice and our pitot heat on, because we're going to need that in these rather abominable weather conditions today. So let us get ready for departure. So we've got everything ready. Now let's all our gauges look good. Let's start taxiing down to the runway there. Alright, so we're going to be using runway 21 for our departure today. Now these in these foggy weather conditions, your runway can also get quite slick as well, so something to be cautious of when you're taxiing. Alright, now we're going to need 1-notch flaps.
Approaching 2-1.
I think nobody else is crazy enough to be flying in this weather today. And the fact that AI traffic turned off. Alright. Coming out onto the runway now. We shouldn't need to back taxi, there's not much down that end. Alright. So from here we're then going to turn left out over the VOR and onto our course. Alright. Looking good. Let's depart. Looks like our winds are coming in from the south, so we'll have a bit of a crosswind as we do our takeoff roll, and we'll probably have a bit of a crosswind when we come into landing at Hilo if these weather conditions keep up. And up we go. You're up. Let's get up. So we still got our positive rate. Said it's all about flying on instruments because we're not going to be able to see squat today. We're going to be keep very careful eye on everything. Watch our vertical speed isn't too high. Flaps up. Alright. So now we're going to be, yep, so there we go. We just pretty much passed over the VOR. So what we're going to do now is we're going to start turning onto course. So you can see from his behaviour there, pretty much that's when we were sort of doing away. Now ideally we want to have that arrow pointing down because we want to be heading outbound from this VOR. We don't want to be heading towards it, we were heading away from the first VOR. Oh, excuse me. You can see that we were starting to head back onto the track there. Now what I should be able to do here is I should be able to put my autopilot, nav and altitude hold on. So it will now guide the aircraft. You can see here you can see that it guided the aircraft onto the track, so it's now going to turn the aircraft to maintain the track. So it will go past it slightly and sort of do a bit of a wobble as it goes through, and it's part of how you maintain the directions and keep your VOR going quite nicely. So we're now going to be adjusting slightly back, and it's sort of going to do a bit of a wave as we sort of intercept until we can maintain it nice and comfortably. Now what you can see here down here on the DME down here is you can see that the distance is now increasing, and we can also compare that to our speed. So it's saying that we're travelling 115 knots, and that looks about right. This looks about what we're travelling at according to our airspeed indicator. So everything's looking on track. So pretty much this is how you navigate with VOR, is that you put, or with instruments, it's a little bit of foreplanning, and you sort of know where you're going with stuff like that. But it is very, very easy to do, and it's a traditional part of aviation, is actually flying sort of with radio navigation when you don't have when you can't see the ground. So there you go. All right, let's look now. Oh, so we've got some beautiful weather up here. Well, kind of beautiful weather up here, but yeah, definitely challenging down there on the ground, which is good. So we can sort of confirm some things where we're heading off the coast of heading away from the coast there, so we're sort of getting some things right. But as I said, we've got our VOR down here. Now what you'll also see down here as well, I'll just zoom in on that. So this is, I want to show you why. Now you remember that I put in the second VOR, so the Apollo point VOR 112.3. I put that into the VOR and made that the active on nav2. Now the reason is that most aircraft will actually have two nav radios, and they'll have two gauges, one to display nav1, one to display nav2. So in our particular case here, we've got our primary HSI uses nav1, it's this data from nav1, but our secondary sort of, or our VOR2 indicator down here, gets this data from nav2. Now, in an ideal world, one of the great things about when you fly VOR to VOR is that you can, especially if their ranges overlap, or even if they don't, is that you can use one to complement the other. Well, the complementation thing comes definitely from when when you can sort of pick up both at the same time, because you can confirm your outbound course and your inbound course, because essentially they're the same. They are going to be the same. You're flying the same radial outbound from one as you are inbound to the next VOR. So yeah, there you go. Very interesting lesson for you there. So we can see here that we've, because we've got the 2 indicator here, we can see that we have picked up the second VOR. And what we can also do is that, again, some aircraft have the ability to actually switch to the DME for nav1 and nav2. So currently we're 7.6, we're heading away from nav1 from for our Lanai VOR. So if we switch this over to nav2, we can see that we're 63 miles and decreasing, heading towards the Apollo point one. So, but that becomes more important later on when we're doing things like approaches and stuff like that. So yeah, this is the guts of it and the basics of it. So we're going to continue our nice sort of calm climb here as we head up to our cruising altitude of 6,000 feet. And then we're going to have a look as we approach into See, that's just beautiful weather, but you just can't see anything. Now I don't need my landing lights on anymore. There we go. That's a little less harsh, isn't it? Yes. So yeah, we've got our beautiful, so it looks absolutely beautiful, but yeah, it's a bit of a nightmare to try and navigate in. So we're heading up here, as I said, we've head up here to get some clearer skies, and then we'll continue navigating as we go through. Hopefully it also should mean that we'll see any mountain peaks to peek through so we don't hit them. Alright, so let's continue our journey heading towards Lanai. Right, so we're just over 40 miles away from Lanai now. So now it's time for us to switch over our VORs. Excuse me. So one of the things you'll notice is that VI navigation, as good as it is, you do have to maintain and keep an eye on things, because you may not always, because these dials are not always the most accurate. So sometimes you may have dialed the wrong degree by 1 or 2 degrees. So you just gotta keep an eye on it, and you may need to adjust this, slightly 1 or 2 degrees here and there as you go through the flight. So yeah, it's something that you just sort of keep an eye on and go from there. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be flying. So we should be around about the 107. It looks like we're still on the 107 radial. We did a bit of adjustment. So what we're going to do now is we're going to switch over from our main to our standby frequency. So we're going to switch over that one here. So it'll take a few seconds just to re-register itself. So you saw the red nav, sort of blank nav, saying it wasn't receiving as it was switching frequencies. And now you can see that the needle hasn't moved, so it means we're still on course, which is excellent. And what you've seen now is that you've seen the arrow switch from to to. So we're heading towards now, which is good. So we're heading the right way, which is good, and our nav system sort of just adjusting from looks like a minor discrepancy there, which is good to see. So what we see now as well is that our distance on our nav has also changed. So it's now decreasing, so as I said, as we fly towards it. So we're about 25 miles away from our nav there. So as I said, yeah, this is something about VI nav, is that it will sort of do a little bit of a snake pattern every now and again, just as it reacquires the signal, and then it'll bring itself back in just a moment. There we are. So it's finding its way a bit, and now it's just reacquiring. Now it's reacquired, so now it'll do back. So this is the bit of the snaking that it will do, just to sort of make sure it's on the right track. So it will sort of correct and sort of just slightly guide itself. And this is an important thing to see, because you'll see this, and we'll need this more when we do our ILS approach into Hilo runway 26 very shortly. Well, maybe not very shortly, but yeah, towards the end of this flight we will be doing that one. So. Alright, but it looks like overall we're on course. We've got everything's locked in the way it should be. So what we'll be doing now is we'll continue on our path here as we head towards the big island of Hawaii. Alrighty, so here we are. We're almost on top of the Apollo VOR. We're only about one nautical mile out. So what we'll be doing now is that we'll now be changing to 103 degrees and turning to the outbound VOR. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to jump down, and we're going to need to adjust our heading here. So we're currently running 107. So let's wind it back 3. Now you notice that as we go over the VOR, it goes dark there for a second, where it goes to red. Basically it means that there's a vertical area over the top of the VOR where it won't actually receive any signal, because VOR, it's sort of an omnidirectional signal, but it has a point vertically straight up where it won't receive anything, and that really helps you for when you fly over the top of it. So you can see now that we're turning onto the heading now, and it's sort of stabilized. It will do the snaking thing again as we go across. Now you can see that we're sort of, we're moving away from the 107, because you can see because I've left that second indicator on 107. And you can see here that on our DME, or distance measuring equipment, I forgot to say that before, distance measuring equipment, you can see that our range is now increasing as we move away from this VOR. So this is the next leg of our flight to Hilo. So what we're going to be doing, we're going to be flying this leg for about 60 nautical miles. Now on that heading, that should then put us in a point where we could then turn pretty much almost straight, do a lazy right turn straight into the ILS approach for runway 26. So, and with the weather that it is, you know what? I think the winds are going to be slightly favouring something else, but you know what? I think we're gonna need the ILS for this one. I think is what we're going to be doing. So we're gonna trust in the ILS for this one. It's a good way to sort of see that one there. Now, the other thing that'll happen as well is that when you go over the top of a VOR, you may have noticed that down here the nav light down here actually extinguished itself. So you do have to re-engage nav to actually to do that. Go. That's actually looks like it hasn't done that properly, so let's disengage our autopilot. As I said, it's all about you've got to monitor your aircraft as well as other things here. So let's turn to this one here. Let's bring the aircraft back on course, shall we? So this is a good chance for us to see, so you can see it over there, so it's telling us, so it's the needles to the right, which means that our course is, our desired course or radial is actually to the right. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to fly towards that. So it gives us a chance to practice that here. So we're going to do, again, this is sort of the snaking thing I was talking about to help you sort of bring into the VOR. So we're going to head here. So this is a few degrees, about 10 degrees off our desired course, but towards the needle. So we're going to use that, and we're going to head towards that there. So instrument flow rules, when you're using instruments rather than GPS or visual aids, it does require a bit more forethought, not only forethought but also just just general cockpit resource management, as it's known, because you do have to sort of pay attention to what's going on around you. So you can see that that needle starting to move towards us now. Ever so slowly but surely, the needle's moving towards the centre. You can see we're getting closer to our track. Really is a beautiful day, except for all that fog, isn't it? So by using this equipment, you don't even have to use an autopilot. You can use this just to, or even if your aircraft doesn't have a nav hold, you can still fly using these your VORs and ADF and DME, so you can actually know where you are, and you can actually sort of track when you don't have a visual reference point on the ground. And all this just serves to make aviation safer, and it means that it's always good to know this, so it means that you don't have to rely on GPS. So if your GPS system fails, you've got multiple other ways that you can continue to navigate safely around either virtual or real skies. Alright, so we can see that we're coming back onto track there, so I'm going to start turning here. There we go, we're going a little bit past it, but we'll turn back on now, so I can, now we've re-established it, I'll re-engage my nav hold, and that will get us back onto course. You know, I'm tempted to get a bit more ground clearance. I think, you know what, let's take this last leg up to 7,000. We don't want to be flying into any ground. We don't want to have a controlled crash into terrain, that's for sure. Lean back some of that mixture a bit. So navigation by instruments it's scary. It can seem scary because there's a lot of concepts in it. The fact that you've got to think of, you know, we talk about radials, we talk about instruments, we talk about radio signals, line of sight. Yeah, there's a lot of theory behind it, but putting it all together is actually not as hard as it seems. It's really not. Yeah, we've got ground clearance there. I thought I'd better check that before I start waffling on too much. So there's a lot of theory behind it and a lot of prep work, so you do have to spend your time, you know, consult your charts. So for this, things like tools like Plan G are absolutely incredible. They really are, because you get to, you know, that will pull all the VORs and NDBs from your FSX database, so you can actually, you know, use them and plot courses and stuff like that. Now, so this is actually how I actually plot this flight. So I actually had a look through the Plan G, sort of the maps for the area. And I had a look for the VORs and found, yeah. Plus, this is a trip that I've always really wanted to do. I really love doing it ever since the old Microsoft flight days. Now, one of the other, so we've pretty much so far we've been talking about DME and VOR. So DME is the distance measuring equipment. So that's how far we know where we are from the VOR that we're heading towards or heading away from. It also gives us an indication of speed as well. So it's sort of based on how quickly, you know, like how long or how long it takes between the radio signals to get to you and get back to the between you and the VOR station. Now, VORs don't generally have DMEs, but they don't always. So you won't always see this when you've got to tune into a VOR. Most of the time you will, but there are times when you won't. The other thing that we talk about, of course, is VOR. So a very high frequency omnidirectional and ranging. So what that does is it gives a radial sort of 360 degree transmission where it actually just goes, yep, cool, I'm here, but it allows you to fly it allows a lot more like radial work, and it is quite accurate. It really is. And when your sort of your navigation can be saved to it and actually adjust itself based on any wind or crosswinds and stuff like that. So it's a tried, tested, and true way of doing instrument navigation. One of the ones that isn't around as much anymore, and it is being very rapidly phased out around the world, is NDB or ADF navigation. So NDB is non-directional beacon. So it's a ground station. It just broadcasts a signal in all directions. It doesn't give give any other information. And then the accompanying aircraft gauge is the automatic direction finder. So this one is sort of the earliest form of radio navigation, but it suffers a lot from accuracy and behavior of the signal and atmospherics as well like that. So the needle, when you're not tuned in to an ADF, will always sit at 90 degrees, so it will always sit at this course. And what this ADF will do is that it will sort of always point in towards the ADF, but it is the needle's heavy, so it's not as accurate. So you're looking at anything on plus or minus 5 to 10 degrees. So it's something that is out there. It's another thing for you to be aware of, but you won't find it anywhere near as often. You still find it quite a lot in European and Middle East, European and Russian airspace. But yeah, it's not something that you'll find very often anymore throughout the rest of the world, and a lot of the stations in the real world are actually being closed now in favour of VOR or GPS approaches. So it's still out there. In a lot of older aircraft, it's the only one that's there. So some of the vintage aircraft that you may find available for FSX, there isn't actually a VOR option. It only has ADF. So it's a lot more challenging to fly. And you know what? It's if you want to test your skills, it's an interesting challenge to work with an ADF with an ADF approach or an ADF navigation set, because it's interesting. What it also does, because it works on the AM frequency bands, what it can also do is that there are certain scenery designers who actually add sort of things into it, which is kind of cool. Most notably, of course, is OzX. So what OzX do is that they've actually recorded actual AM radio stations in Australia and actually put recordings of them, so you can actually tune in and use them for navigation, which pilots do. So yeah, that is something sort of pretty cool as well. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to be, where are we? So we're sort of passing we've passed the high terrain there. So what we're going to do is we're going to start our descent down towards, so we're going to end up in the soup shortly. So as I said, we're heading this out to around about 55-60 miles for our DME from where we've gone. So what we're going to do though first, before we start doing that, is we are going to set up our frequencies for our ILS approach. So, as I said before, we're going to be using the ILS into runway 26 at Hilo International here on the Big Island of Hawaii. So what we're going to do is the frequency for that is 110.7. So what we're going to do is we're going to set that one up similar to how we set up the first when we first departed. We're going to set up as our standby frequency on our nav1, and we're going to set it up as the active frequency on our nav2. So this gives us an idea, so we can switch and check the ranges and stuff like that as well, so we can confirm and stuff like that. Alright, so first off, let's set it as the standby on nav1. So we're looking for 110.7. So fortunately we've already got the decimal 7 there, so we just change that one to 110. Go. And then we just adjust this one to decimal 7, and we'll switch and make that one the active. So DMEs often attached to ILSs are usually a lot more short-ranged because they are designed to sort of work as it is a precision landing, sort of precision guidance system. So let's quickly have a look, and we can see that yep, we've picked up our we've already picked up the DME from there. So if we check here, so we can go here and we can go yep. So we're 13 miles out and closing. So we'll leave it set to here because we want to mark that at the 55-60 mile approximately mark, so where we start our turn, so we can turn towards the ILS. So one of the things we're going to do here is I'm going to preset this one. Preset this one to our runway heading, which is going to be runway. We're going to be running 26, which is runway, which doesn't have a variation. Actually, interestingly enough, its position and magnetic variation is pretty minimal. So it is actually, the runway actually runs at 260. So we've got that one set. So that one's preset there. All right. So now we can. Now we're going to start our descent. So our last bit, of course, is going to be to set this one. We're going to start descending down to. We're going to descend down to. Let's descend down to 4,000. Nice, nice. I'll make it 3.5. We're going to just head down to 3,500. Nice leisurely descent rates, and wind back the power a bit. So because we're going to, otherwise we're going to overspeed, so we're going to wind back the power a fair bit actually. might increase that descent rate because we're only about 45. It's only because we're 45 miles from that, so I might just increase that. There we go. Alright, and we're going to enter this soup very shortly, and then we'll keep an eye on our DME, and then once we're 55 to 60 miles, then we're going to make our turn, and we're going to head towards the ILS approach for runway 26. Alrighty, so here we are, we're 60 miles out. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a couple of things first. First of all, I'm going to gauge the heading hold for a moment as I switch my VOR. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to engage my heading hold. I'm now going to switch over to the frequency for the ILS, which is 110.7, which we'd already preset as our standby. So we're 12 miles out at the moment. Now what we know is that we know the runway is going to be 260. So we're going to dial up our, we're going to change our selector, our heading selector, to 260. So I'm going to roll that one through. Oop, too far. There we are, 260. So what we're going to do now is that we are now going to disengage our heading hold. We're going to disengage our autopilot. So we're now going to commence turning. So now we need to, we're essentially going to be turning right, and we're going to already pick up, we've already, so you can see on the HSI down there as well that we've picked up, I'll just quickly zoom and show you, we've picked up the glide slope as well. See how now we now have 2 yellow indicators on the side? So that's our glide slope as well. So we need to keep an eye on that throughout our approach here. So we're going to be turning, we're going to turn south, and so we're going to turn south, well, probably just going to turn northwest actually, or southwest. And until we start to intercept the, as we head to intercept the ILS. So ILS is essentially very similar to a VOR, VOR DME. So we've got our range on it. It just adds in an extra element as well, which gives us our glide slope. So the idea is the glide slope will touch you down on most airports. The the glide slope will touch you down at pretty much the exact spot you need to land for where you want to be for your landing. Sometimes it can be offset, so make sure you check up your charts and have a look at the airport diagrams if it's an airport that you're unfamiliar with. So you can see now that we've just gone past the heading that we need, so we need to turn back. We're doing that bit of a snaking again. Now as we get closer, of course, the adjustments that you need to make are going to decrease. So I'm going to need to just put our landing lights on. Got bouncing around a bit. There we are. Nav lights on. Okay, so we're going to need to, we're coming back towards the right heading. One that wind the power back. We want to get down to a point where we can get our gear retraction. Now I'm way below the glide slope at the moment, so I'm going to climb a little bit. Okay. So I'm going to be still a little bit to the right, sorry, to the left of track. So let's move back in again. watch that descent. As I said, this is where when you're flying in cloud and stuff like that, it can be really easy to lose your frame of reference. So you've got to keep an eye on a lot of instruments. So you've got to keep your eye on your vertical speed. Like I know I was descending way too fast there, so I need to stabilize my loss of altitude. I need to put a bit more power in, climb up a bit so I can stop losing altitude for now, because I'm still way below that glide slope, which on some airports can be really dangerous. Alright, coming in a bit, so we're getting a bit closer now. Alright, let's get the gear out. Gear down. Pitch up. Okay. Looks like we're pretty much on course now. Yep, so looking good. Still a little bit below the glide slope. So what I'm going to do is now I know, fortunately for me, we're coming in from the water, so I don't have to worry about too much about running into any obstacles. But I'm going to want to at least maintain my altitude, if not climb a little bit on this approach, so which I don't overspeed with the gear. I think I can just make out the PAPI lights there. Oh, wow. Yeah, and they're telling me that I'm low. Yeah, it's got looks like I've got red PAPIs at the moment. So let's I can see on my glide slope indicator there, I'm still slightly below the glide slope, but I'm getting, but as the glide slope, you know, it is a relative thing, so it will, you know, obviously it's usually about, most airports use a 3-degree glide slope. Some use more, some use less. Now again, we're going to touch back to the left here. Alright. Now I'm going to put my first notch of flaps in. Looks like I'm back on track again. As I said before, because as you get closer to the VO, the ILS or the VOR transmitter, your corrections need to get a lot more minute, because your rapid corrections will send you going off in the opposite direction far too quickly. Alright, so we're going to be just going to get our descent rate about right. So there we are. We're on slope. Again, a little bit to the right, just get a little bit left of track again. I think we might be getting a bit of crosswind here, I think. Alright, we're dead on the glide slope, a little bit to the right of track. Still drifting, let's drift a little bit left. Alright, I'm going to bring in... yep, there we go. Bring my second notch of flaps, coming in a little bit above the slope now. Back off the power a bit. Now watch your trim as well. You're going to need a bit of because when your flaps kick in, they can sort of force you down quite quickly, so you've got to watch that. And our approach speed coming in about 85 knots, 85, 90 knots.
26.
And RAS being very helpful and letting us know that we're coming into runway 26. It's quite murky here in old Hilo, isn't it? Alright. A little bit above the slope. Next, let's go full flaps as we come in on a short final. Happy's lighting up beautifully. A little bit below the slope. come in here. Slide to the right again, so we'll just nudge that back. As you can see that, you know, I'm using very small adjustments here because I don't want to go too far, because then I have to bring it back too far. And you can see the so just past the middle marker there. Speed 80 knots. And that will bring us in almost perfect. And there we are, landed safe and sound at Hilo International on the big island of Hawaii. After transiting using only instruments for instrument and instrument navigations methodology to get here from Lanai. So yeah, as I said before, there's a lot to think about, there's a lot to monitor to be safe, to fly safely in instrument flight rule conditions. One of the great things I can sort of say to, if you want to, not if, but when you want to practice this kind of stuff, one of the best things to do is actually fly a route and do it in like clear weather. So fly it in clear weather, so you know you get used to sort of seeing what it's like and stuff like that. And then go ahead and refly it again in rather poor conditions. The particular weather setting I use is a default FSX weather setting, so it's fogged in. And this is a really good one to be able to practice your approaches, because pretty much you can't see the ground. You really can't, as you can see through the flight today. So it means that you have to rely on your instruments and stuff like that. And when you come in for approaches and stuff like that, because you have to pass through that that sort of fog layer, it means that you do have to pay attention to things like pay attention to your VSI, your vertical speed indicator. You got to pay attention to your HSI. You got to pay attention to your nav, and it's just a really great way to actually be able to sort of practice your skills as well. Of course, you can always do it at night as well. So we're just going to exit the runway here. Here's the runway at Delta, and we'll taxi along Alpha. So yeah, instrument flight rules, or flying on instruments is can definitely be a challenge, but at the same time, it's also very rewarding, and it gives you a lot of skills, and it just makes you overall well, I think it makes you a better pilot. But even if it's something that you don't think you'll use very often, it's always important to have these extra skills in your toolbox, as it were, to make sure that you're ready to face any situation that the virtual world may throw at you. So as we taxi down here towards our parking, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed and learnt a thing or two from this little tutorial today. As I said, definitely, as I said, this is a companion to an article that's been published over on the FSX Insider website. So I'll put a link in the description down below for you to go and check that out if you so desire. But yeah, this is a good way just to test it, and I think this is a good way to put all the theory into practice as well. To show that it's complex, yes, it seems intimidating, but at the same time it's also it's one of those skills that's very applicable, it's very easily applied. You do have to think a lot, but it's part of the challenge of aviation. It really is. So there we have it, folks. So today we've successfully completed our flight there on instruments. Thank you very much for joining me for this little introductory guide and sort of brief tutorial of putting it all together. Thank you very much for joining me again, and as always, folks, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying these videos and want to see more. And of course, as always, you can catch up with me and all the things I'm up to between videos by finding me on Facebook and on Twitter. Just search NovaWing24. Alright, folks, thanks very much for watching. Take care, safe skies to all, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.